There are moments in the history of science where emptiness echoes louder than any cataclysm, and this is one of them. It wasn't a supernova's blaze, a black hole's roar, or a comet's streak that set off the alerts. It was the void itself, staring back with intent. The James Webb Space Telescope, perched 1 million miles from Earth and peering farther into the cosmos than any machine ever has, was scanning a desolate stretch of space long dismissed as barren, a forgotten gulf amid the galactic tapestry, merely a blank page in the infinite ledger. But what it unveiled there demolished that illusion. In the most forsaken corner of the universe, the telescope captured a fracture that neither emitted light nor warped it. It was unraveling it. And then, in a twist that chilled the observatories, that fracture pulsed subtly, methodically, as if aware of our gaze. What the telescope documented next compelled a cadre of cosmologists, quantum theorists, and gravitational experts to discard established paradigms of existence. Because this was no nebula, no rogue asteroid, no wormhole. This was something other, something that adapts, something that probes, and perhaps something that invades. This is the chronicle of what James Webb has just revealed in the abyss. An entity so alarming in its dynamics, so aberrant in its mechanics, that researchers are murmuring the inconceivable. What if it's bleeding in from beyond our reality altogether? It all commenced amid a profound survey proximate to the Eridanus supervoid, an immense, almost legendary expanse renowned for its enigmatic cold anomalies and sparse cosmic architecture. While fine-tuning near-infrared arrays for a void characterization initiative, the James Webb Telescope registered a deviation too orderly to be organic, yet too erratic to be engineered. Rather than discerning remote quasars or diffuse plasma, the telescope encountered an impeccable ellipse of negation. No radiation permeated it, no curvature embraced it. This wasn't a gravitational mirage, it resembled a rupture in the continuum of space-time. Envision pouring acid onto a flawless canvas and observing the canvas dissolve instead. That's what the readings portrayed, a zone not merely devoid of substance, but stripped of foundational principles. Preliminary conjectures posited it could be an undiscovered variant of dark energy condensate, but the energy profiles mismatched. There was no thermal signature, no tidal distortion, just a frigid, inert domain of absolute nullity that defied comprehension. And then, across successive nights, the boundary of that entity commenced to oscillate. Not akin to a pulsar in rhythm, but like something probing. Experts from diverse academies initiated scrutiny of the gravitational echoes encircling the anomaly. And what they unearthed was more disconcerting than any singularity or gamma burst could aspire to be. The ripples of perturbed space-time that emanated from the entity weren't haphazard. They adhered to a cadence, exact spacings that aligned with Fibonacci sequences. First 1, then 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. As if the entity wasn't merely persisting, it was encoding. But encoding for what or whom? Furthermore, this encoding wasn't photonic. It wasn't ultraviolet, microwave, cosmic ray, or any familiar spectrum. It was a perturbation in quantum fields themselves. The Webb telescope's precision interferometers logged infinitesimal fluctuations that synced with each encoding surge, like something was tweaking the bedrock of existence at its core. It didn't merely violate cosmological tenets, it subverted them. Gravitational wave specialists were consulted. String theorists dissected the metrics. The verdict? These were not innate oscillations, but the imprints of deliberation. No recognized cosmic formation, conducts itself thus. Not magnetars, not void filaments, not even exotic matter clouds. The exactitude was meticulous, the tempo undeniably contrived, and some posit it might not be the encoding of something extant, but something emergent. Then arrived the juncture no one anticipated. In a subsequent scan, executed exactly 31 days post the initial capture, the James Webb cadre witnessed a translocation. The entity, erstwhile presumed immobile, had repositioned, not via spatial traversal, but through probabilistic layers. It didn't glide like debris or propel like a vessel. It flickered like a glitch from one coordinate to another, as if leaping across the quantum foam, not navigating it. It rematerialized a mere 0.003 degrees astray from its prior locus, an infinitesimal variance to unaided vision, but ruinous to scholars' computations. Because if an entity can relocate sans traceable vector, it implies it's unbound by causality. It implies it's unbound by chronology. The sole analogous conduct resides in superstring hypotheses, brains interfacing instantaneously across multidimensional gulfs. But this wasn't infinitesimal. This was a configuration rivaling a gas giant, enacting as though relativistic mandates were optional. When cosmologists modeled the translocation, they disclosed something even more harrowing. The trajectory of its manifestations sketched a vortex converging inward toward our solar domain. By the fifth month of dissection, the cadre was no longer querying if the entity harbored peril. They were querying if it harbored agency. Topological configurations about the anomaly solidified into Mandelbrot iterations, self-similar motifs that mirror viral replications, not like crystals or lattices, but like invasive algorithms. The prolonged the telescope scrutinized, the more the configurations mutated, attuning to the instrument's alignment, rectifying instantaneous feedback, almost as if it was calibrating to scrutiny. Researchers devised a harrowing label for this conduct: adaptive topology. Some even theorized the entity could be a sort of multiversal conduit, or graver, a parasitic framework engineered not to traverse, but to embed, awaiting activation. One quantum simulation, engineered to emulate extra-dimensional intrusion protocols, malfunctioned upon ingesting the telescope's dataset. It stalled, cycled, and ultimately yielded a solitary phrase in its diagnostic: integrated. The implication was stark, though unspoken in halls. This isn't an observation, it's an incursion. Following months of amassing further metrics, the Webb cadre discerned a peculiar occurrence, not within the entity proper, but in the enveloping expanse. A cosmic background fluctuation, barely detectable initially, started to manifest. Divergent from relic radiation or sporadic stellar emissions, this imprint was curiously harmonized with the entity's oscillations, yet phase-lagged, as if we beheld a reverberation from afar. Spectrographic breakdown affirmed something bone-chilling. The imprint harbored resonance strata that ought not exist, amplitudes orchestrated not by stochastic discharge, but in embedded harmonics evocative of quantum entanglement chords. Some scholars dubbed it the whisper of the rift, but others eschewed lyricism. An imprint of this nature, they asserted, is nigh impossible sans intentional apparatus. Not a tumultuous galactic mechanism, but a fabricated motif. More alarmingly, the harmonic wave fronts weren't fixed. They modulated faintly to Webb's orbital variances. This spawned a nightmarish supposition. The imprint wasn't inert, it was reciprocal. It was surveying, quantifying, mirroring, as if the entity wasn't solely transmitting, it was assimilating. In the midst of escalating unease in cloistered forums, a cohort of abstract geometers was enlisted to deconstruct the topological framework of the oscillations. And that's when paradigms fractured. Concealed amid the imprint's phase intervals was an ingrained constant alien to documented cosmic events. The Feigenbaum bifurcation ratio, a delineation of chaos thresholds in dynamical systems that has long intrigued complexity theorists for its uncanny alignment with universal transitions. But here, it reiterated flawlessly in the gaps between the anomaly's perturbations. Some scholars surmised it might constitute a transdimensional dialect, a sort of geometric cipherstone, a herald, or worse, a vector. If an agency or phenomenon inscribed that emblem there, it would signify comprehension of our reality's profoundest architectures. And what ensued plunged the dread further. When the sequence was projected in 4 dimensions, it sculpted a tesseract lattice, one virtually congruent to the protein-folding motifs in terrestrial virology. Happenstance? Conceivably. But when scholars computed the phase gaps, they discerned the oscillation cadences mirrored nucleotide sequences in our genetic archives. Something wasn't merely surveying. Something comprehended its quarry and perhaps anticipated our gaze eons prior. That's when the veil descended. Openly accessible, web telemetry feeds were abruptly throttled. Repository entries from astronomical consortia commenced evaporating, and pivotal researchers engaged in the anomaly probe started receding from their stations. Communiques from implicated bureaus altered in timbre. Formerly brimming with fervor and candor, they grew nebulous, circuitous, institutional. Confidential sources divulged that myriad global observatories were convened in crisis sessions, encompassing the Hubble Legacy Network, ground-based interferometers, and even emergent ventures like the extremely large telescope array. Not owing to the entity's proximate menace, but because none could verify it hadn't already permeated. Speculations proliferated. Was this a rift aperture, a sentinel breach, a harbinger vortex? The chronology of its manifestation was eerie unto itself. It surfaced solely after we forged the apparatuses adept at perceiving it, implying it had either lingered eternally or bided until our maturation. But perchance the most disquieting facet was this. Antecedent deep probes, such as Pioneer and Juno derivatives, had skirted this quadrant sans registering anomaly, which connotes the entity is either veiled from archaic senses or it materialized post-haste. Yet the revelations deepened as data from complementary instruments corroborated the Webb's findings in unforeseen ways. Ground-based radio arrays, attuned to the same supervoid coordinates, began intercepting correlated low-frequency hums that synced with the visual perturbations. These weren't mere noise artifacts. They exhibited polarization patterns indicative of extra-dimensional leakage, akin to theoretical models of brain-world collisions where parallel universes brush against one another, exchanging energy in bursts that could destabilize local physics. Cosmologists, drawing from string landscape theories, hypothesized that the entity might represent a bubble nucleation event, a point where our universe's false vacuum decays into a truer state, potentially erasing swaths of reality in a phase transition wave. But the terror amplified when simulations projected the oscillation growth. If unchecked, the entity's expansion could induce a chain reaction, propagating through dark energy fields and accelerating the universe's tear toward heat death, or worse, a big rip, where atoms themselves unravel. This wasn't abstract philosophy. It was a ticking existential equation. with the entity's pulses serving as the metronome counting down. As analyses intensified, interdisciplinary teams unearthed layers within the anomaly that hinted at metastructure. Embedded in the gravitational lensing artifacts around the ellipse were subtle asymmetries that, when mapped via tensor networks, revealed holographic encodings, projections of higher dimensional information onto our three-spatial manifold. Much like the ADS-CFT correspondence in quantum gravity posits, this suggested the entity wasn't a mere flaw, but a boundary interface, where information from an adjacent cosmos seeps through, carrying with it alien constants. A slightly variant, fine structure alpha, implying divergent physical laws where electromagnetism behaves unpredictably. Theorists whispered of the multiverse's firewall paradox realized, where crossing such a threshold incinerates information, preserving quantum consistency at the cost of annihilation. The emotional weight settled heavily. If this entity is a gateway, gazing into it might invite reciprocity, pulling our reality's threads loose, unraveling the cosmic web we've taken for granted. The dread compounded with emergent patterns in the data's metadata. Anomalous correlations appeared between the entity's pulses and terrestrial quantum experiments, as if distant entanglement linked the supervoid to Earth-bound labs. Particle accelerators reported fleeting deviations in decay rates during peak observation windows, echoing the entity's Fibonacci cadences in probabilistic outcomes. This fueled speculations of non-local influence, where the anomaly exerts subtle causality violations, potentially retroactively altering historical data streams, a concept drawn from Wheeler's delayed choice experiments but scaled cosmically. Philosophically, it challenged the anthropic principle. Why does our universe permit such intrusions now, at the dawn of our technological adolescence? Some posited it's no accident. The entity might embody a selection mechanism, culling realities unfit for multidimensional coexistence, testing our resilience through silent provocation. In parallel, astrobiological lenses reframed the terror. If the entity harbors biological analogues, its adaptive topology could mimic panspermia vectors, seeding invasive codes across voids. Spectral hints of organic polymers in the surrounding haze, detected via Webb's mid-infrared prowess, evoked chiral asymmetries not matching Earth's biochemistry, suggesting an otherworldly chirality that could disrupt native life forms upon contact. The implication? This isn't inert, it's potentially proliferative, a cosmic pathogen exploiting universal boundaries with humanity's curiosity as the unwitting host. The culminating phase, as ever, unfolds in hush. On the 52nd day of dedicated Webb surveillance, just prior to the telescope's pivot to alternate vistas, alterations struck. The anomaly's imprint evaporated. No oscillations, no perturbations, mere equilibrium. But ere that quiescence entrenched, Webb detectors seized one terminal frame, a spectroscopic mosaic unparalleled. It wasn't an ellipse, it wasn't a fluctuation, it was a form, balanced, fractal, impeccably scaled, like a mandala adrift in oblivion. It endured but 4 frames, too ephemeral for exhaustive unraveling. Yet computational heuristics validated the architecture was non-stochastic. It was topological, comprising interwoven toroids, hyperspheres and geodesics, crafting an iterative lattice. And then it dissipated. Thenceforth, naught has resurfaced, but the metrics persist. The hush persists. And perhaps most petrifying of all, the prospect persists that whatever this embodied, whatever lurks yonder, didn't depart. It merely ceased permitting our perception. So what did James Webb truly behold out there? A tacit intruder in the interstellar gloom. An encoding destined for those evolved enough or imprudent enough to heed. Or perchance merely a fissure in actuality we were fated never to fathom. The harrowing verity is this. The profounder we delve into the abyss, the more the abyss appears to reciprocate. What we erstwhile deemed a vacant expanse now resembles a threshold. And maybe, just maybe, something across it has at last discerned our intrusion. This revelation transcends astronomy. It's about what we are unprepared to confront. It's about the likelihood that we've ignited an interchange with a realm that employs not particles, but topologies, cadences, and voids. And the direst aspect we yet ignore if it's endeavoring to converge or to caution. One certainty prevails. James Webb didn't merely archive readings, it breached a veil. And what's lingering beyond may redefine all we presumed to grasp. Not solely about the cosmos, but about our fragile perch within it. If this narrative compelled you to ponder what's lurking and what might already be encroaching, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more harrowing unveilings, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an instant the cosmos fractures its veil anew. Because this isn't conjecture anymore. This is cosmology responding.